Many Sims likely know a lot about the main games on the PC, but what about those old, more obscure spin-offs for the consoles? Everyone who has seen my videos know that I usually like to upload demonstrations of these games, typically showing off stuff people may not know about or may find interesting, such as clips from the earliest prototype build we have of The Sims 2, the M40 July 29th build. I thought it would be interesting to upload a facts video, quick facts about the games you may not know about. Now I'm mostly going to be covering the Urbz and The Sims 2, as those were my favorites growing up. Therefore, I know more about them than I do the other games. Sorry, Bustin Out. I love you too. Your aesthetics are on point, but I just find you more frustrating to play, and your needy Sims are more tedious. Anyway, let's get into it, starting with the Urbz facts. We all know the start of the Urbz, especially me. Since I had to make many new games while messing around with debug cheats or other stuff, Will I Am and Darius greet you at the first shoddy apartment. You show off a power move to Will, Darius says cool, you can earn a rep, then they, leave. But did you know the game was originally gonna have a more in-depth opening that better explains the story? When using debug cheats, there's a cheat called Show All Dialogues, which pop up dialogue boxes from the game. However, it also pops up quite a few unused ones. There are a few boxes that clearly demonstrates alternative openings to the game, and it seems Darius wasn't as generous as we thought he was. It seems like the game was originally going to open up at Darius' penthouse. Darius had invited your Urbz there for an emergency meeting. He refers to villains causing trouble in his turf, and how he needs somebody to stop them. He chooses you, specifically because you're a nobody. You can lay low and won't be seen as suspicious as he would. So you make a deal with him. If you take care of the villains, he'll give you the penthouse, and perhaps help you with your rep. I honestly prefer this opening, and I don't know why the final game has a more abridged one. In my opinion, it makes a lot more sense. Why would Darius, a big celebrity, just decide to help a random nobody become famous? Him being desperate for help is more logical, a I scratch your back, you scratch my back situation. Of course, some people might come to this conclusion while playing the game, but I think this opening makes the situation way more clear. With these dialogues revealing an alternate opening, it looks like the game was also supposed to have a more in-depth tutorial as well. From what I recall, other than the power social in the beginning and the jobs, the game doesn't really have much tutorial to it. Yes, Darius will tell you how to highlight objects or talk to Urbz, but I don't recall seeing the explanation of the mood system, or how you can actually earn rep making enemies, which, by the way, I never realized that you can take a villain route in this game until I was messing around with debug cheats, so I feel like these boxes would have been helpful after all. These tutorials might have shown a scrapped goal as well, because you never need to spend specifically 500 on clothes like some boxes suggest. Early screenshots suggest that pets would have been able to go anywhere with your Urbz. At first I believed this wasn't an accurate guess because with debug cheats, you can create a pet in any district you want. Therefore, I was led to believe the pets in these screenshots were likely just the devs testing how the animals functioned without having to go to an apartment level to do so. After all, if you also look at these early screenshots, Harry Snivel behaves like a regular Urbz with characters doing regular socials on him instead of the power socials. This was likely because they didn't have many Urbz created at the time, and needed more to test the game, so they used Harry Snivel as a normal Urbz for this time being. But I was looking through the dialogue boxes, and there's an interesting one that pops up. This box tells you that your pet ran away and to check your apartment. So does this indeed suggest that at one point, the animals would have followed you to other districts? I don't know what the ran away function would have been. If it would have ran away solely because its needs weren't being met, like in The Sims 2 Pets, or if it would have just randomly gone back home. Scrapped object in the Urbz called Robot Street Performer, it's safe to assume this object was scrapped pretty late in production, since it even appears in the Prima guide, which tells you its functions. This robot can be seen in the trailers for the game too. The robot was intended for Kicktail Park, however in the final version it is nowhere to be seen. But, using debug cheats, you can actually find the robot after all. He even has animation. You can even interact with him, but this causes his animation to stop forever, and you have to place a new one down for him to move again. So this proves the theory that, for whatever reason, he was scrapped very late in production. I'm not sure why he was, but considering that he doesn't work properly when you place him down, after all, I believe he should be still, and then he should start dancing after you've tipped him, not the other way around. So it could be that the developers couldn't get him to function properly before the game's release. I don't know. Now, this early trailer of the Urbz mostly shows off concepts rather than the actual gameplay, but look closely at the Create an Urbz screen. It appears as though they had concepts to do layering clothing, which is a feature that we wouldn't see until its technical sequel, The Sims 2. So this means even though The Sims 2 did this concept first, the Urbz already had it in mind. I'm gonna assume they didn't go with it because it's too hard to do. Even in The Sims 2, certain items still clip with each other. The trailer also shows that the store was originally planned to be like a traditional build buy, meaning you can just buy items from the start screen, or in this case, the Zam phone, whatever the hell it's called. Honestly, I would have preferred this because as much as I love the Urbz, buying objects is annoying. It's annoying to want to decorate your penthouse, but you have to keep going to districts to get the objects because your inventory can only hold so much. They really should have had a build buy that categorizes all the objects by districts. Cass, or Create an Urbz, there are some scrapped items you can find when using debug cheats. There are quite a few bald heads, which were likely supposed to be hair, but missing the models. There are also multiple versions of the same items, which might have also been originally different stuff but using these items as placeholders. There are also weirdly jewelry that just gives you glasses instead, and for men, there are a couple of unusable cosmetics, such as body hair, which is technically in the game. Bobo the Hobo uses it, but for some reason it's inaccessible to the player. There's also wrinkles, which goes totally unused in the game. I would assume that Louis Bricks would have used the wrinkles, since he appeared to have them in the CGI cutscenes, but he also uses glasses on his bald head, which is another cast item that's inaccessible to the player for some reason. But no, he doesn't. In the game files, the wrinkles are titled Hobo, so they were likely intended for the hobo after all, but Bobo uses the body hair already, and both the body hair and the wrinkles take up the beard slot, and since you can't apply two beards at once, this is likely why the wrinkles go unused. There is also Skid's shirt in the regular tops rather than the custom tops, which suggests it wasn't gonna be a customizable one at some point. In early screenshots, you can see Skid wearing the solid black version too. Contrary to popular belief, this game actually does have personality points like the previous ones did. However, they're associated with districts, and they're also hidden. But looking at the Prima guide, they tell you these personality traits in every district has a unique one, even if every member in the district has the same personality. If you choose the Foundry as your Urbz districts, your Urbz might be a little nice, but very playful. If you choose Gasoline Row as your Urbz district, then they're a horrible person. If you chose Neon East, then your Urbz is likely hopped up on coke. These personalities affect how Urbz do certain things, and who they get along with easier. I don't know why they don't have these personality points displayed somewhere on the district screens. I think it would make it easier for knowing what district to choose in the beginning. Districts also have friend or enemy districts. For example, Neon East, Kicktail Park, and a Foundry are all mutual buddies. However, Neon East dislikes Central Station, and Cosmo Street dislikes Skyline Beach. What effect does this have on the Urbz? Well, districts that hate each other are more likely to autonomously use mean social interactions on each other, whereas districts that love each other are more likely to use friendly or romantic interactions. Likewise, it's harder for your Urbz to befriend those from enemy districts, especially if your Urbz is still dressed up in a style or of a district they do not like. They also have behaviors depending on which districts they like. During the daytime, a liked or neutral district member will visit, but during the nighttime, usually when the party starts, an enemy district member will come around hoping to start drama. On top of personality points, each district also has a set of unique interests. These mostly affect the chat function and what topic your Urbz will discuss. If your Urbz discusses something another does not like, they will get bored of the conversation and likely end it early. However, if your Urbz talks about something they do like, they'll become more animated and the conversation will last longer. I never use the chat function often, though. It's just easier to gain rep using the other socials. The devs mentioned marriage being a thing in this game, yet in the final release, there is no option to ever get married. I don't know why this feature was scrapped, as there was likely another one scrapped during late development, but I have a couple of guesses, which both guesses are pretty much that it conflicted with gameplay. One, it might have conflicted with the character's behaviors. As I've explained, every character actually has a pretty stone-set behavior. They show up at an enemy's or friend's districts at certain times. They all have their own special interests. The villains always rob the boss characters first, and of course, the boss is always the same Urbz that instructs you at your job. It could be that somehow marrying one of these Urbz messed up these behaviors and thus broke the game. After all, in my video where I changed the boss's characters' appearances with debug cheats, it actually broke many of the jobs. Even though they are still technically the same Urbz, the jobs refused to work because they had different appearances. Marriage might have done something similar, which caused the devs to become frustrated and give up on it, but that's just my theory. It could have also conflicted with the join crew function, which is similar. If an Urbz joins your crew, you can play as them whenever they're around. However, if your relationship drops with them, they leave the crew. Was it possible to be married to an Urbz and have them in your crew at the same time? Who knows? Districts have 4 songs, but Diamond Heights only has 3. Why? This is due to a development oversight. Pop 1 was accidentally written over the 4th song. What would that 1st song been? It would have been I Wanna Be Bad. Which you once could have heard the full song on the now defunct Urbz website. A snippet of it is also used as the ringtone for Diamond Heights in the game. But did you also know that this was a real song? The Sims was believed to not have any real songs translated into Simlish until The Sims 2, but Urbz had a couple. And I'm not talking about the Black Eyed Peas ones, cause those are obvious. I Wanna Be Bad is actually sung by Willa Ford. Here's an example of it in English. I wanna be bad, make that look so good. I've got things on my mind I never thought I would. I wanna be bad, make that feel so good. I'm losing all my cool, I'm about to break the rules. I wanna be bad. The Foundry also featured a couple of songs. Dead Leaves was by Concert Trick. The track was released in 2000, 4 years before the Urbz release, and it's mostly instrumental, except it has a man speaking in this part.
What are you doing? Oh, where
I honestly prefer the version in the Urbz. The incomprehensible vocals made the song feel more haunting, more like a fading memory. Stupid Fambaloo by Matmos is another song that predates the Urbz, released in 1998, which is kind of funny because Stupid Fambaloo sounds like Simlish. But no, despite the Foundry being my favorite culture in this game, I mean, this is the only track in the game that I dislike. I'm sorry, it doesn't really sound like music, and often when it's played, I thought my game was bugging, but I guess that is exactly what a hipster would listen to. Matmos also made another song specifically for the game, which was Lighthouse. The Asian opening and ending are actually different from the international or North American release. The Asian versions edited the models into a different style. Also, certain characters appear to be happier or less aggressive, like the Urbz at the subway. They don't appear as hostile, or Mizuko Jackson, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing her name, in the opening. She looks kinda menacing in the North American version, but in the Asian version, she's lacking that devious smile. In the ending, Isis also has a bigger smile on her face. It's not only the openings that are different, but the models are too, like in the game. The Japanese version features completely different styled faces, every character looking different from their North American counterparts, while the Korean version isn't as drastic. There are still some differences. The skin is overall smoother and lacks some detail. The men no longer have their 5 o'clock shadows, and the women no longer have their eyeshadow. However, the Korean release still gives you the Japanese-styled Urbz for the players, you know. And, Bustin Out's Asian models are also different from the North American ones. I've only played cast of the Japanese ones, so I don't know if the NPC models are also different or if it only affects the player sim, but I'm gonna assume they all are. And I actually first discovered this, like, I was the first one to discover this. I don't want to brag, but I'm just a big fan of, you know, these games, you can tell. And yeah, I was the first to discover the differences between the American ones and the Japanese ones. And I brought that attention to the cutting room floor, which they did an amazing job because someone else did a whole lot of comparisons of more of the characters. So if you want to look at more differences between the character models, go right there. I'll even link it in the bottom of the description. Anyways, let's get back to it. I haven't played much of the Japanese Urbz beyond looking at the character models, but I did try out the job in the Foundry, and I did notice there were differences there too. For example, Crispin's dialogue includes a quote from, Warhol, of course. Since Crispin was inspired by Andy Warhol, and the Foundry itself was inspired by Warhol's factory, this is a very rough translation by Google. But this quote was supposed to be, making money is art, and working is art, and good business is the best art. Japanese Crispin likes to quote other artists. He also quotes Oscar Wilde. In the English versions, Crispin never quotes anyone. Japanese Crispin is also not guilty of wrongful deaths at the workplace. Anyway, I haven't played the other jobs yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they also had differences in their descriptions too. Speaking of Crispin and Warhol influences, I thought it'd be nice to cover this real quick. Crispin. Crispin. He was my favorite Urbz, and therefore, he's kind of become the unofficial mascot of this channel. I recreated him in the Foundry in The Sims 2, in its prototype as well. And I often use Crispin for demonstrations in my videos, but do you need to know who he's named after? If you looked at many of the Urbz, they're often named after something or someone. Sometimes a pun, sometimes a reference. Jet Rocket is literally just Jet Rocket. Roxanna Hard Place is a pun off the saying stuck between rocks and a hard place. But Crispin was likely named after someone, and that's someone being the actor Crispin Glover. Most may know him as Marty's dad in the first Back to the Future film, but he also played, Andy Warhol in the Doors biography film from the 90s. Therefore, it's pretty safe to assume that this isn't a coincidence, and Mr. Black, who already takes quite a few inspirations from Warhol, was likely named after Crispin Glover as a more subtle reference to Warhol. You know, better than just naming him Dandy or Candy. The Urbz had a series of rep comics by various artists. In the Foundry one, Jade tries to impress Neo by giving him a high five. Neo rejects the high five. But how accurate is this to the game? Well, I did a new save and attempted a high five on Neo with no prior relationship to him, and he accepts it. This is because the high five is a social liked by Kicktail Park, which is a friendly district of the Foundry. Even if the social wasn't intended for them, districts that are friendly with each other tend to like their socials as well. So that makes this comic inaccurate. There is a debug cheat to cycle through the NPCs. You can find 3 Urbz, not Sims, but Urbz, with the name Pat Urby, Placeholder 3, and Placeholder 4. Pat has the appearance of the default herb, while the placeholders actually have Jade's exact fashion. Pat and the placeholders never make an appearance outside of cast. Or create an herb. Or do they? When starting a new game to show off the debug cheats, I used the make me hate everyone and be miserable cheat. Funny one, I know. But upon looking at the relationships, Pat and the placeholders are in it. They also use the seemingly scrapped thumbnails for Jade, which features an outdated style of the Urbz. Curious as to if they can actually be interacted with and found in the game, I tried contacting one, except I forgot. If an herb hates you, they will always reject your invite. Therefore, it's hard to know if any of these placeholders can be interacted with in the game or not. Maybe I'll find a way someday. And unfortunately, as far as I can find, the scrapped herb, Tiny, still cannot be found anywhere in the game. In Sims 4's Get Famous expansion pack, there's a live actor career. In it, your sim can choose from a variety of gigs. Did you know that one of these gigs is for a sitcom called The Urbz? It even references Blankwood Towers with its description, saying, "The roommates on the 11th floor of Blankwood Towers get up to some crazy shenanigans. They will bring their love, laughs, tears, and friendship to your living room each week." Out of all the spin-off games, The Sims 4 seems to reference My Sims the most, so it's really nice to see an Urbz reference in there. If you're watching this, Sim Gurus, I'd love to see more. Perhaps not as interesting of a fact, but in the game files, this hair worn by Loop-de-Loop is named Dragon Ball hair, and Kiki Blunt is also referred to as Hot Topic Girl. I just thought that was funny. Alright, now it's time to move on to some Sims 2 facts. People already know about a few Urbz references in The Sims 2, such as the Jade portrait you can buy in Build Buy, and being able to find a copy of the Urbz with the metal detector. Darius also shows up on the covers of the comics with the comic book case object. But did you know that Serotonin of Neon East is on a male t-shirt? See? There she is! I never saw this one talked about much online, but I did bring attention to it on both my Tumblr and adding the pic to Sarah's page on the Sims Wiki. The self-portraits you can buy uses the same poses that the pictures in the Urbz uses. The pictures of your herb once they get famous enough and start showing up around the city. I play a lot of the prototype for The Sims 2. I feel it's a good way to learn what some of the development was like. You probably already know that The Sims 2 was supposed to be the Urbz 2, but it got scrapped and turned into The Sims 2 after Urbz poorer sales. Playing the prototype of The Sims 2, the icons for the style option were different. Instead of scissors and a cloth, it featured a person who kinda looks like they're dressed like a pimp. This feels quite urban and reminds me of the Urbz style. This icon does not exist in the Urbz, so this makes me suspect this graphic was intended for the Urbz 2. The Smiths in Story Mode features a unique thumbnail from the other NPCs. In Story Mode, the Smiths' thumbnails are closer up mugshots, while the other Sims are not as clear, and they're from the shoulder up. When playing the prototype, every Sim used to have the same style of thumbnail as the Smiths did, and when looking at them further, they resembled the thumbnail used for the player Urb in the Urbz. In the final release of The Sims 2, all the thumbnails were changed except for the Smiths. This makes me wonder if this was an Urbz leftover and the Smiths still using them was a development oversight, or if it was intentional because they thought it'd be funny for the aliens to have a different thumbnail, as they are aliens, so the devs didn't bother with updating theirs. However, the other aliens in Story Mode both have normal thumbnails, so I don't really know. The AE arcade unit is nothing special, just a generic looking arcade cabinet. But in the M40 build, the arcade cabinet once featured the amazing Matey texture from The Sims 2 PC. This was likely just a placeholder texture and probably wasn't ever intended for the final product. For some reason, The Sims games for Xbox usually features unique loading screens. The Sims 1 had them, Bustin Out had them, Urbz had them, and so does Sims 2. But if you look closer at The Sims 2, you'll notice a few of these screenshots were taken in earlier builds of the game, rather than the final release. Patrizio uses his design from the M40 build, not the final one. Torin is missing his headband, and the AE arcade cabinet uses the amazing Matey texture. In this picture, where the default sim is goosting Ozzy, look in the background. Farrah Moonbiscuit has different pants, or they might be glitched in general. She also has long red hair, which even in the M40 build, although her thumbnail has it, she's already been switched to have the black ponytail. The cabinets and stove also seem to resemble the Urbz style more. This suggests that these screenshots might have been taken in an even earlier build than M40. Oh, if it still exists, I hope it pops up somewhere. Version. There exist these NPCs called grandparents. They were solely used for the randomize function. The randomization will take two sets of grandparents and create parents in your sim based on their appearances. This is always completely random and you couldn't choose which grandparent. However, in the M40 build of the game, it seemed that this was different, that at one point you could have chose your own grandparent. Of course, since this is a barely functioning build, the randomization feature doesn't actually work. Continuing with the M40 build, its version of Sunset Canyon is slightly different, apart from being unfinished. For example, at the entrance of these buildings, there are these weird objects here. They kinda look like hearse feeders. There's also this big pile of sand, but what's most interesting is this object right here. It looks like it was intended to be a place to hang criminals. In this build, you can go right through it due to it being unfinished and lacking any collision. It also cannot be interacted with. I'm gonna assume it was never intended to be an interactable object. It was likely intended as a decorative object exclusive for Sunset Canyon. Why was it removed? Unsure, but I'm gonna assume it was because it was deemed too morbid or violent. After all, with the ghost of The Sims here, this has strong implications that some may have been executed, like hanged. The teppanyaki table is one that actually made its appearance first in Bustin' Out. In Bustin Out, it had more details and more animation than its counterpart in The Sims 2. The M40 build of The Sims 2, however, features the exact same object, still lacking in animation though. Why was this object changed in the final version? Well, if you look at the original table, its graphics are actually worse. It doesn't look as defined and it looks blurrier. Why did they make it simpler in appearance? My only guesses was that it saved more space. This plant is also less detailed in this PS2 version than it is in the Xbox version. Therefore, it made me think they had to simplify some objects in order for the game to run smoothly. Paul and Jeb are rather creepy Sims from Free Play. They can't be found in any of the houses. No, the only way to find Paul and Jeb is if you were to delete all the other Sims from Free Play, then throw a party. These Sims are unique because they can be befriended, but they cannot move in with your Sim. There is no option to move them in. This is likely because these Sims were intended to be fill the world if you did delete every Sim in Free Play, because if you move them in, then there will be nobody to attend the parties you throw, which would kind of break that function. These Sims also existed in the M40 build, except their names were Placeholder 3 and Placeholder 4, kinda like how in the Urbz, Placeholder 3 and 4 were also just clones of Jade. Unlike the placeholders in the Urbz, these made it to the actual game, except their names changed. Paulholder, which is fittingly based off Placeholder, and Jeb Turtson, which I haven't a clue where that name came from. Look, a lot of us would have loved to have the Urbz 2. As much as I love The Sims 2, I would have traded for the Urbz 2, so I like to carefully examine The Sims 2 for Urbz 2 details. When watching very early trailers for The Sims 2, you can see that some feature a different UI. Some of the UIs are gray, which reminds me of the Urbz UI. I wonder, was this UI intended for Urbz 2 instead? The Sims 2 features some characters from its PC counterpart. There are the Monties, Isabella and Patrizio. There is also Goopy Gilsgarbo, or Gilsgarbo? Anyway, the Caliente sisters and Don Lothario, which, speaking of Don, I never understood why he was included when Hector is also in the game. They both feel like very similar characters. You know, scumbag ladies man pretty boy. Anyway, Bob and Betty Newbie can also be found in The Sims Free Play mode, even though they look quite different from their PC counterparts. Speaking of which, why is Betty black in The Sims 2 but white in The Sims 2 Pets? Bob still looks very similar in Pets compared to 2. Interestingly, the Goths do not make an appearance in this game. Perhaps after the first Sims and Bustin' Out, they thought they were overused? You can still create them in Free Play if you wish. However, on top of Sims from the PC, there were also what would have been Urbz had the Urbz 2 been made. These are, as far as we know, Felicity Usher, Betty Buttercup, Candy Cup, and Toothless Joe. Some fans even believe that in this early concept trailer, likely for Urbz 2, the two girls with the protagonists were early versions of Felicity and Candy. I won't be going over many facts for this game, because frankly, it's one of my least favorite Sims console games. Don't get me wrong, I used to play this one for hours as a kid. Sometimes I'd even play it for 8 hours straight. But it was the first game that hinted at the upcoming future for the series, which was the game's adult and edgy themes being toned down, and the series getting infantilized, discarding its satirical and crude humor and trading it for cutesy, wholesome, cozy fun. The Sims 2 Pets removed woohoo functions, most romance options, many complex socialization features, and look at this! In The Sims 2, you could dread in other Sims and give them the finger. Same goes for the previous games before Sims 2. But in The Sims 2 Pets, the first mean social you get is nah nah? What are these Sims, 5 years old? Yes, I understand that The Sims 2 Pets wanted to cater to children because it featured pets, but when you start comparing The Sims 4 to The Sims 2, yeah, you can definitely feel the edge of the series is toned down. Anyways, let's get into the 2 facts I wanted to talk about. Let's get into the 3 facts I wanted to talk about. Pets took out many features from The Sims 2, but oddly, it removed some clothing pieces too, as well as many good build-by objects. For example, despite being able to still make aliens, Pets removed the alien clothing, but I've discovered, with debug cheats, you can view hidden clothing options in CAS. And guess what? The alien clothing still exists in the game. With debug cheats, you can equip it. The clothing pieces from the costume trunk also still exist. So, the question is, if these assets still exist in the game, why hide them? I had a theory, so I checked the GameCube version of The Sims 2 Pets using the same cheat, and it seems to prove my theory correct. These assets are completely removed from the GameCube version. This means the devs likely cut out many of the stuff from the previous games to save space. GameCube games were notoriously small, therefore you cannot make a game too big, so to make sure the game could also be on the GameCube, Pets had to remove some stuff. It really sucks that the other versions had to suffer just because they wanted to make them equal to their GameCube counterpart. The Sims 2 Pets are not playable. You can switch to them, but you're only a spectator. But there is a debug cheat that actually lets you control the pets like you're The Sims. As you can see, they're a bit hard to move around, but you can still get them to do stuff. Normally when I'm playing The Sims games, I play with debug cheats off. When I do play with debug cheats, it's only to test things or find out more secrets about the game. However, I always play The Sims 2 Pets with debug cheats because I think pets should have always been playable. Not only that, but the Pets AI kinda sucks. Pets are very bad about taking care of their own needs. And not just that, but one time there was a group of pets with my pets, and they all wanted to play with each other, and these actions conflict with each other. Like, say, Pet A wanted to play with Pet B, but Pet B wanted to play with Pet C, but Pet C wanted to play with Pet A. So they all got stuck in this loop where they're trying to play with each other, but nothing is happening. The AI is so bad, it can't cancel out these actions, and basically, all my pets became miserable, starving, near death. But with debug cheats, I can take control of my pets and prevent this sloppy bug from happening, all while saving my pets as well. The Sims 2, the television channels are all screenshots taken from its PC counterpart. However, for some reason, The Sims 2 Pets uses the same, although slightly altered, channels from the Urbz. I don't know the reason behind this, but maybe because one channel from the Urbz featured animals, and The Sims 2 Pets thought it was fitting. This has been The Sims Console Facts. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something. If I find out more facts or I realize I had forgotten some, then I will make a part 2. I also apologize for any stuttering or mess-ups I did while stating these facts. This is the first YouTube video I've ever made where I speak. As you notice, my other videos, I just show gameplay and shut the hell up. So, please forgive me. I just figured that using my voice and saying the facts would be more... it'd be better than just having to read them on the screen, you know, with text. So anyways, yes. I hope you enjoyed, and I will be uploading more of me just playing the game regularly, showing off the debug cheats or other gameplay stuff. Anyways, thank y'all for watching, and thank y'all for subscribing and all that other stuff. I really appreciate it.